Good afternoon and welcome to Budget Model Railways, and this is the third update on my OO Gauge simple shunting layout. Stick with me, I'm going to show you how I painted and weathered the track, talk a little bit about the wiring tube point motors, and explain a little bit about what I've been doing. So quite a bit to talk about today. So obviously this is a bit of a first for me. I haven't ballasted OO track actually for a great many years. Our first layout that we ever did, I ballasted, and then I did one in the shed, which in the old conservatory, and the heat got to it and buckled the track. And with N-Gauge, I've not bothered. I've done a couple of N-Gauge. OO, obviously, we've been out of for a while, so I thought I would have a go at that. So I also decided to do something again that I've done in N-Gauge, which is to have a go at painting and weathering the track. And we do a little bit of a close-up there. So quite grimy, painted, weathered and tracked. But if I put, excuse me, so I'm just trying to get a bit of track here. If I put a bit of unpainted and weathered track next to it, then you can see, I'm a big fan of just using track and ballast mat. But I can also now beginning to see that just sometimes it's quite nice to do it perhaps a little bit more realistically. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an explanation how I've done that. Couldn't be simpler really. So the track has been painted using this, which is just Daler Rowney cheap artist acrylic burnt umber brown paint. I've done that because modelling paint, all the proper paints that you see are, in my view, very expensive. A little tub like that is a couple of quid or more, whereas that was a couple of quid or more. So you're getting substantially more. Burnt umber is quite a dark colour. I've had a little bit of a look around. I think as long as it's brown, it doesn't really matter. So quite enjoyed it actually. It's quite therapeutic just sitting here for a couple of evenings painting the rails. Now obviously there's some on the top and it'll all want cleaning, but as I've got to clean after ballasting anyway, I'm not too worried about that. So I then had a look at the sleepers and I decided I wanted to try and pick out the wood grain a little bit. Well, I started by doing what I normally do, which is dry brushing, which is very effective. So you just get a tiny bit of paint on your brush, dab it on a piece of tissue and dry brush it. But it's very slow because you've got to get it dry and just right. It is quite time consuming. And then I had one of those sort of serendipitous moments. I went to do a bit of dry brushing and my brush was wet. And as I was brushing it on, I suddenly realised it would work much better doing it as a wash, which was really quick and much easier. And all I was doing was getting I just put some water in the paint lid, put some paint on it, little dab of paint in there, so that you've got a wash, and run it across like that. I put it down a bit flatter. Now, what happens then, it looks very bright and garish, but of course it dries a darker colour. And as you can hopefully see there, it picks out all the wood grain. And it dries matte. I'll do a little close up in a minute. And it was that simple and it was that quick. I'm just going to wash my brush out. And so if I try and do a little zoom in onto the track there. Well, thanks. There we go. You can see how that's worked. And I quite like the fact that it's patchy and, some bits are better than others because, after all, despite what the rivet counters think, not every sleeper is going to be the same, is it? So I'm really very pleased with that. It's come out quite well. I'm pleased with the way it's dried. It's picked the wood grain out. I've got the rails painted rusty brown on the edges. By the time that's ballasted, that'll look very nice. Now, we'll do ballasting, obviously, when we come to it. I have a big tub of ballast here, but in the true Budget Model Railway style, I actually bought 3 packs of this 250 gram knock ballast in a beigey brown, which I quite like the look of. And why am I using it? I'm using it because it was cheap. It's very difficult actually to compare prices of ballast because different people list it in different ways. But I got 750 grams of a light sandy coloured ballast and a dispenser for just under £9, including postage, which is substantially less actually than buying new ballast. And I quite like the darker beige look. Ballast doesn't stay grey for very long, and so I'm quite happy. I'm happy because obviously I've had some interesting comments. I just model a generic railway. I'm not interested in all this. You've got to decide what era and what date and all that. I think it's all nonsense. It's just a little UK branch line layout. So I'm not getting too wrapped around whether what railway had what colour ballast at what time. Interestingly, when I was at the Kent and East Sussex last year, they literally had one line which was brand new grey ballast and one which was basically black running alongside each other. So I know there's all sorts of debates around it, but I will be quite happy with my dark brown acrylic paint rails, my washed sleepers and my dark beigey brown ballast. And I'll be interested to see how that works. It was basically thrown in with what I bought, so that's fine. I put it on the cork. I have put some masking tape down so that I get a nice neat edge. So let's have a look now then at how I've done my point wiring tube. Now there's 2 other videos on this on the channel, so please look at those for a bit more detail. But basically what I'm using is a plastic tube that I bought from Model Shop, Kerno Models. Sorry, I don't know what make it is. It's in their display. So it must be readily available, and I use this, which is floral wire from Hobbycraft. You put, let's see if we can zoom in. There we go. Now you make a little loop to fit on the end of the spike, and what I actually did was got quite fancy spancy, as Doug would say. I cranked it up and out so that to cater for the fact that the wire is lower than the spigot. So it's got like a little dog leg in it. And it's really as simple as, there we go. Now, as you heard me say before, why go to the expense of motors, point levers, point switches and all that? You're going to flick a switch to make a point move electronically, and you're going to do that manually. So there's really nothing in it. Now, the knobs on the end were a bit of dowel, and then I've got, as some of you know, my fingers aren't always great. I decided I wanted something a bit bigger to pull, and I remembered that my wife, who is she's a wonderful craft person, actually does all sorts of crafts, watercolour, sewing, all sorts of things, crochet, and she's got jars full of buttons. So I bravely walked into her sewing room, helped rummage through, helped myself to some buttons and took them. Yeah, no, of course I didn't. That way lies madness. I asked permission, as they used to say on Blue Peter. Make sure you've asked permission of an adult. So I asked my good lady wife if I could have some buttons and went and picked some. And that works really well. And then what I'm going to do then is what I've done on all the others, is very carefully mask all that point out, because what I don't want is ballast getting in all the point mechanism. Now, because I'm using a beige ballast, I don't think it'll look too bad. And what I then find, and I'll show it when we get to it, is I'll very, very carefully, gently ballast these things rather than the sort of normal when I'm dumping ballast on. So quite a lot of progress there, as you can see. Now, I've also, this is off the old loft layout. It's an old shelf that came from my late mother-in-law's. This is a great way of making platforms and things. Big piece of timber, because it gives you a really nice, neat, sharp edge. I'm not too worried about weight. It's not the world's biggest layout. It's also worth pointing out that when you look at a lot of old photos, the majority of stations, you did not go up and into the station building because you needed to raise the platform. It was graded so that the road ran into the same height as the railway station. And although I was going to have a good shed here, if I run it there, then I can do my classic layout, bridge over, road winding down into the station and goods yard. And then the bay can have a fence here, which will look really nice. So I've changed the layout a little bit. So that's it, quite a bit done. It was quite time consuming because everything's got to be painted. I've had a few people asking for track lists. I'm really sorry, I don't have a track list. I didn't design this one on any rail like I sometimes do. I literally put it together out of the track that I had lying around. But if you wanted to copy it, you've got 2 points there, which I think is a right and a right. 2 points there, which is a left and a right. So you need 3 rights and a left. That is an R606, which is what you need to run parallel. One there for the bay. And then really the straights are whatever length you want to make your passing loop and your siding. So once you've got the points and the two RO606s, really do what you like. I've used a double straight there to go with the point, and so that therefore is a single straight. So that will give you the idea. If you want to copy the track plan, it really is just a passing loop, a siding and a bay. As long as you've got the points, you can then fit the sidings to whatever bit of board you've got. So somebody mentioned they got 4 foot by 1 foot. Well, 4 foot is about more or less the length of this. This is wider than a foot, but if you didn't worry about having anything in the front here or in the back, you could actually easily do it in a foot. So there we go. We're getting towards the build, so I don't know how much more model railwaying I'm going to get to do, but I'm enjoying using the shed. It's really nice. I can have my Japanese layout behind me. I've got my desk that I can work on. And then I've got this room to do this layout. The Japanese layout's coming along really well. I showed you the card system last time. I do work in chaos. I've come to sort of terms with that. I'm not a tidy person. I don't work well in a tidy environment. It seems to offend some people. Other people seem to be like me. It's getting quite contentious out there. But it's just the way I work. I don't need a big area. I tend to work very chaotically. Yeah, this will wind a few people up. So that's my workbench at the moment. And I work quite happily on that. But I know what some people will say. But it works for me. I've got my teacup and my radio. And all my tools scattered around. And when I want a tool, I rummage through the pile of tools. So there we are. Can't show you any trains running because the track's all mucky and everything. But I am quite enjoying doing this in OO, and I'm looking forward to running a few trains on it. I've sold I've got some locos, more locos than I thought actually. I've got quite a few nice locos left, just about enough rolling stock. I've been selling it off. But then when I finish this, I know this will be my only OO layout. So when I finish this, then I can sell off everything that I don't need. But I am enjoying doing a bit of OO. It's an interesting one. I still think OO is too big. You know, I could do this in a quarter of the size. But as I've got a lot of OO, I am quite enjoying running it. But, you know, I'm also quite looking forward to doing the O when I get chance, using the old Lima. But I think I explained I've hit a problem with the baseboard. So there we go. Quite a long video. Hope some of you are still watching. And I'll speak to you again probably in about a week's time.